Take it away.
Hello everybody. Thank you for sticking out after tea time, and presumably you're the dedicated ones who really want a drink at the end of the day. I'm really pleased to be here today, and I hope that what I can do is that, well, when I was watching things today, there are a number of presentations which really chimed with ideas that have been running around in my head, conversations which I've had with colleagues, and I imagine that you're in a similar position to that there are some things where you thought, yeah, some things where maybe you've disagreed with them, but you're prepared to, okay, let's just go with this. And what I'd like to do is to tell you a little bit of a story about a view of learning and education and the student life, and then offer you a little bit of an insight into how we're trying to make things happen at Southampton based on that. So, rich and personal, and perhaps paradoxically, institutional personal learning environments. So I'm completely PhD in computer science, can't make the thing go on. The world is changing. We've seen this, we know this, the world is changing. Machiavelli had something to say about change. Back from the 2000, this appeared in the New Yorker, or a version on that. Apologies to Peter Steiner, who actually produced the original. But there's something in there. There's something about the fact that the most unlikely people appear to be using technology. How many of you know an elderly person who's a whiz at Photoshop, or somebody who, despite whatever you thought, has suddenly mastered text messaging or emailing or blog writing or wiki editing because it mattered to them? So what I'd like you to do is to throw away some of your prejudices, or maybe try to spend some time thinking about how often are you making assumptions, how often do we make assumptions about things where the evidence actually suggests something slightly different. A little ramble through history. Cavemen communicating through telling stories. Pythagoras. No women here, the Greeks didn't do women really, and certainly not in any educational context. And today is Ada Lovelace Day. And Ada Lovelace Day is about celebrating women in technology. And every woman in the audience here and every female speaker here deserves to be applauded for that, applauded for providing role models and actually reminding some parts of the community, because I'm sure the men here are all absolutely dyed-in-the-wool feminists, yes. And so, but sometimes, apparently some people need reminding that part of the population is not male. Can't imagine why. There were, when people couldn't read and write, Samuel Pepys in his Daniel Defoe used to be a trader with in sort of cloth and things like that. He travelled around Britain, and if you read, he talks about how illiterate people did business, how they managed to do adding and subtracting, keep the books, keep records of things, even though they weren't necessarily particularly formally educated. But this is another aspect of educational technology. That means I've got my pictures in the wrong order. Right. Yes. A few centuries earlier, I did say it was a random trip. Alexandria, the library at Alexandria is legendary. Again, there don't seem to be many women there. Those of you who read Lindsay Davis will know that there are ways of rewriting that particular history. But, the library at Alexandria. So we've got technology here, basic technology, but papyri, but also an organisational system. People can do stuff. We know how to organise information. People can learn. Medieval woodcut, this is pouring the knowledge in. This was actually a ho-ho. They weren't believing that you could do it like this. But there are perhaps, have you ever met anybody who thinks you can pour the knowledge in? God, good idea, wouldn't it? Yes, the students would like it. Back on my feminist rant, Ada Lovelace, she's here randomly, but she's not really here randomly. It's a good day, and technology, more technological advances. And shortly after Ada Lovelace, when there were large-scale uses of computers, the computers were actually humans. And most of those computers were women. We had several. Early Cal, I'm quite fond of this. I think this is it never really happened, but... And Machiavelli, he's my chum. Well, you know, he's... not personally. But the people who are most likely to oppose change are those who've got the most invested in the old system. But actually, if we look around us, we're all using, walk down any street, you're bound to bump into somebody using their text messaging system. And they're not all 16. This stuff, the stuff about the digital natives and things like that, that's long been, there's lots of stuff in the UK, people are sort of moving on from those sorts of arguments. But the world has been changing. This was the map before the one that I showed to you at the very beginning. So along came the web. And the dogs are modifying their behaviours as well, and there's a sort of vague track of, well, what was happening. We have, and this isn't trying to be absolutely scholarly, but, there was a time when a lot of people believed in a teacher-instructed model of things, and UK higher education kind of bought into that. And then we got a lot of discussion with the use of technology about student-centred learning as a sort of a mantra for institutions, but also people who were using technologies, looking into how the technologies were being used and saying, actually, we want something where the students build things. We know when you make things, when you do things, that we get more out of this. And alongside there's things like vicarious learning from the way other people learn, socially, discussing learning through discussing the negotiated meaning of understanding, learning through communities of practice. We're all part of communities of practice. Our students are, they members of many different communities of practice. Look at the things they can do rather than let's concentrate on the things they can't do. Our students are fabulous. They come to us, they are they're well qualified, we take them on the basis that they can succeed in gaining a degree. Right? We wouldn't enter them into the university if we didn't think they could succeed. We invest, we give them that hope. Let's see it through. Let's actually do something with them. Alongside on the technology, there's been technological changes. The vanilla web, when people were saying, well, you can't just publish all your notes online, and then people weren't, but actually sometimes students wanted to get the notes published online. It was quite practical because it removed a barrier to access. And sometimes that was okay for a particular purpose in a particular place. Web 2.0, social web, people start talking about discussions, discourse, reflection, some of the academic disciplines which perhaps been marginalised by technology earlier because they felt a bit outside it, were much more involved because reflective practice, discussion, discursion, conversation, discourse was part of their disciplines. It belonged, it fitted there, it worked well. Well, semantics, what's that about? Well, that's about data, and it's about adding meaning to data so that data can be retrieved automatically. Why might that matter? Well, we'll come back to that later. And linking data so that students, imagine a future where students could try the material that you've got, but then by the benefit of linked data be able to go and find additional alternative versions, not that you've authored or had to craft or anything, but that actually are relevant because of the data that they've exposed, because of the way we can find things. So I'm going to go through these quite quickly. Virtual learning environments, people who know me will understand. I believe virtual learning environments are the tools of the devil. There's this idea that, people who wanted education isn't tidy. Virtual learning environments tends to try to make learning tidy. Has anybody ever done any tidy learning? Right? It's messy. It's unfinished. It's got loose ends. It never finishes. That's the whole point. We don't want students to finish learning. We want them to keep on learning. Why give them a model that suggests that it's just little chunks that, we might as well be pouring it back in them again. But, you know, well, reading the dummies on because actually they're nice, it's easy, somebody can tick a box and say, yes, we've got the VLE, the Student Technology for Learning is done. End of problem, we can go home and have a drink in the pub. When Web 2.0 came along, there was a lot of excitement amongst the techie folk. I've talked about that. It made us look at virtual learning environments with a more critical eye. And the use of electronic media amongst animals moved on as well. One of the things we noticed, though, with all this new Web 2.0, was that actually things were existing that couldn't communicate between each other. Anybody had to fill out 6 different profiles in 6 different environments because the environments don't speak to each other. Or else they just want you to use Facebook and they're only doing that because they want to steal your data and abuse it. And in a university, we have the same issue. How can the library talk with the student enrolments? How does the student union or the accommodation people? Where is the data? Where does the data all link up? And that's the issue. How can we take those walls down so that we can share the data? Because when a student comes to university, they do it for living and learning. If there's a problem with their accommodation, that can be just as important as a problem with the library or a problem with their coursework. And it's not sensible, really, to try to solve that problem in an isolated way. So one of the things we did at Southampton, we have a big curriculum innovation project, and we got together vast numbers of people, well, about 20 anyway, and we've had some sort of organisational committee stuff, so that the student union VP for academic stuff is VP in education is actually on the committee. So they have a place, they have a role. Now there is an issue because students, of course, are only transitory with the sort of their time at university. But there was a place for them. We got these people, we were meeting very, very regularly, and we were emerging a big vision which involved vast numbers of flip charts on walls, lots and lots of post-it notes, and lots of people representing lots of different interests, whether it was registry, whether it was academics, whether it was library, whether it was student union, whether it was accommodation or whatever, talking about what they thought in the student life cycle there was needed in terms of technology interaction. And what could we do in terms of thinking about the data there? Things that we've done in terms of these conversations, we've actually managed to have a conversation with our catering manager and saved him apparently £6,000 and actually got him to keep the information about the catering stuff in such a way that it can be automatically printed onto various web pages and things like that. But also we have a map which is a mashup of the whole campus with lots of little Google Doc things in it. And it tells you where the vending machines are, and it tells you what they vend. Very useful, very easy to access. There was the IT people used to keep some information about the rooms. Where the rooms were, yes, that you can find that on the map, but also how big the room was, what the projector was. Every time I came to go to teach in a new term, they do insist in calling the buildings by their numbers, not their names. Now you can just Google that with data Soton in it, and the room description pops up for you with a picture of the room and the description. Not handcrafted by an individual, but somebody has produced a spreadsheet which is, and then published the data output from that spreadsheet so that it can be used by small applications to actually publish it elsewhere in other places and use it. And that's the sort of nub of our, if you like, our vision is about making little things simpler and easier and making them work. Because every little thing that you make work, you can start to slot together. And why is this about education? Well, actually, let's look at what the students do in their everyday life. Let's use the stuff that they use. So we had some students on placement in my lab, and they produced an iPhone app about the bus services. So you can now, wherever you are, geoposition, tell you which buses are coming along when. If the system can't retrieve the data from the server, then it just puts up a PDF of the bus timetable, so you still get some idea of when things are and where they are. People have seen these things and they're now working like memes, and they're telling people how they can go on. So, we had a system, it didn't work, and we found a better way. Unfortunately, my university, what they're doing now is they're planting hedges there, so we can't do that anymore. So we might be doing it actually sort of in the electronic world, but in the physical world, they're not letting us do that. So, the thing about, in Southampton, because we've got research interests which are interested in publishing data, we have taken that on board as an institutional initiative. It's unusual, it's a happenstance, but there are other institutions doing that as well. But the message that's important is people who will do the cool stuff won't be you. You just publish your data and let people get on with it. People heard about the asbometer? Yes, you know about that? People looked up to find out which Boris bike is free. You just publish the data and let some techie geek somewhere decide they're going to produce the app. It's much, much easier. Right. So, in this bright new future, the new academy will use open data to undertake the admin role so that the teachers can get on with the teaching. That seems quite a good idea. And the teachers might actually also refine what they want to do so that we're going to climb over those walls. We're going to look and see what people are doing through informal learning, and we're also looking at what people are doing in the business world, and we're learning from them. Out in the wild world, people, students are putting together things, using blogs, wikis, Twitter, reference works, and there are memes which are spreading, and students are working out how to solve things. It's about going along and having, James and Emily both talked about conversations with your students, lots of conversations with your students, so you find out what you do, you find out the shortcuts, and help them communicate more, and help do the simple things, rather than taking on the massive projects. Digital literacies is a big agenda. Get on that big agenda, but don't think about how do lawyers use technology in their practice? How do historians use it for research? How do English scholars use technology? How do journalists use technology? And use those models as the basis for your behaviour. Those are the discussions we're doing, and that's the way we're building things forward. And we're seeing digital literacies as a way forward, which will actually... Old stories. We had lots of things which were pictures of history. One of the things, when I started my academic career, I was an apprentice. I signed my thumb in a bit of wax. It's a long, ancient tradition. The indenture was called that because it was ripped in half. Good security system. Completely, impossible to forge. Ripped to a piece of paper, the two sides matched together. We have ways of doing things already. But the apprenticeship and the idea of apprenticeship underpins a whole load of tradition in the university sector. Let's not throw that away. Let's instead build a future which actually has a digital cognitive apprenticeship. The three things that are in the world, are in the ether, and which belong in universities. The world is becoming digital, so let's embrace that. Educationally, at universities, we deal with students' cognitive development. Let's embrace that. And in terms of an apprenticeship, let's see our students progressing along a journey as a transformation from being a student to becoming a professional. And let's be facilitators in that journey. That's what we're trying to achieve at Southampton. And if you care to look at our websites and things, you can find much more about it, and we're very happy to talk to people about it. Thank you very much for your time.